this afternoon to our initial reaction to today's budget. I'm joined today by my fellow tax partners from MHA, Patrick King and Tony Medcalf, and my name's Rachel Nutt. Well, I don't know what you think, chaps, about today's announcement. There was certainly a lot he had to say in the speech, but then perhaps even more that we came on to afterwards, a new post-COVID economy. What were your initial thoughts, Patrick?
Well, it was a feel-good speech, wasn't it? He was clearly intent on coming away with as many applause as he possibly could. He spent billions, as far as we can see. I kept waiting for the announcement over how he's going to pay for it. We're aware of the increases he's already announced, corporation tax, etc. But I do wonder if what he didn't say today may become quite important in March when we have the next proper budget, because that wasn't really a budget today.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, much of the bad news had already got out of the way a couple of weeks ago in terms of the changes to NI and the dividend taxes. Tony, what are your thoughts around that and what the impacts are going to be on our clients?
Yeah, I think, to reiterate what Patrick said there, tax increases have already been announced. A lot of it was about expenditure. There was obviously some wriggle room in his numbers as a consequence of growth being better than he thought. So that enabled him to do the feel-good factor. One thing he did touch on was actually introducing fiscal stability measures, where it was important to understand that no current account expenditure will be funded out of borrowing in the future. It will only be capital expenditure. So therefore, growth in expenditure is going to be matched by growth in tax as a consequence of either one, increasing tax rates, or two, a growing economy. Hopefully, it's going to be the latter. But he did then refer to at the end of the Parliament, which we'd expect to see going back to more traditional routes of reducing tax burdens. But that's one to watch. I think from the feeling that it felt like a lot of giveaway must be that there's a lot of tax expected to be raised in the coming years.
I was interested in his comments in the opening part of the speech around the inflation being driven around supply chain challenges and energy costs, and that he'd written to the Governor of the Bank of England. I don't know about you both, but I'd be intrigued to know what was in that letter.
Not allowed to influence the Bank of England, is he really?
I mean, certainly for a long time, for clients of ours that have been in the hospitality and leisure sector, it's felt like a very, very dark place. I know they've had a good few months, but been challenging to get back on their feet. Certainly today there were some great announcements, I think, around that space that should be able to really help them. Business rates, and of course, everyone's personally delighted on the rosé and the Prosecco going down. Any thoughts around that? And I think the combination as well with sort of the minimum wages and there's sort of quite a lot of pressures in that sector.
I think that's right. I think the minimum wage obviously is more relevant in that sector, and therefore with the substantial hike that he'd already pre-leaked before the budget to £9.50, that will put pressure on them. So as the other side to that, he mixed it in with the business rates review. Long time coming. I mean, it seems to just keep getting pushed into the long grass, but this time he's actually said there will be concrete measures. Importantly, there is a 50% relief for the hospitality sector for this next 12 months. But more broadly, for all businesses, there will be a relief for not only for tax allowances on work that you might do on your premises, but actually now specific rates relief. So again, trying to help those businesses invest in their businesses to carry forward.
Well, it encourages you, doesn't it? It encourages you to put some money into your building, but it's not going to then increase your rates immediately. So I think it's a year's grace he's given. So yeah, hopefully that will encourage people to put a bit more money in.
I think the challenges in that sector is having the cash at the moment to be able to go and do that, isn't it? And probably the bank's position on some of them, given what they've been through. I don't think they've got lots of cash into the mattress at the moment, have they, to go and fund these things? Although the tax can do it, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think it was a lot of positioning there around the UK as well, leading the way in terms of R&D, and on the face of it, it sounded like a great announcement in terms of R&D investment and a giveaway there. But some of the restrictions, Patrick, I think may be quite challenging for our clients in terms of what they're actually claiming now.
Well, yes, he announced a lot of extra spending, but as far as the reliefs our clients claim, the R&D tax credits, That's not changing as such, but what he did say was he wants to focus it only on UK expenditure. So if you listened carefully what he said, roughly half of the expenditure that the government currently incurs on R&D tax credits is spent on overseas R&D. And that's going to end from, I think, April 23. So that it could be seen as a 20 billion or 20 billion tax rise by the government by stopping that. We'll have to see how much switches to UK-based R&D as a result, which obviously is his intention.
Yeah, I think challenging if people have already committed into contracted projects where they're spending their R&D, relief they think they're going to get in the next period is perhaps not now coming their way, and they may not be able to just, it might not be impossible to reallocate that spending. So it'll be interesting to see what the drafting looks like when we get to that stage.
Yeah, I think that is important, isn't it? Because obviously the R&D work has a long lead. And we understand what he's trying to do. He's trying not to provide tax relief in the UK for overseas, benefits really. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, residential property developer tax we sort of knew it was coming. We didn't really know what it looks like. I think after today, we still don't really know what it looks like, other than a few headlines now. So it seems that 4% of profit, 4% will be the rate on profits over 25 million, and this is from next April. It seems if you're a property developer, you're perhaps treated a bit like a bank moving forward in terms of these punitive measures. Don't know if you've got any thoughts around that, Patrick. What do you think that would do to the sector?
Well, I mean, the first thought I had was, yes, it might be popular. The property developers are always an easy target, and the public see them as people with plenty of money. But the government, what Mr. Sunak announced today was a huge house building program and lots of investment into building more properties, which of course are going to be built by large property developers. And he's hitting them with an increase in tax, or quite a big increase in tax. So we have to wait and see how it works out, but it seems a bit strange to me to be taxing people more when you're asking them to do more. The opposite would seem more logical, but we shall see.
What are your thoughts, Tony?
I mean, yeah, it's almost a bit like the banking levy, isn't it? In that it's the sector of the economy that's benefited most recently, and therefore it's actually almost like, well, we're going to try and recoup some of that. Just tend to fly in the face of stimulus in the economy, but I think it's just somewhere where we can raise some money. We've seen a lot of commitments to expenditure. We weren't sure where it was going to be funded, and I think it was just an easy target, as Patrick said.
Yeah, I think it has been. I mean, certainly we were talking earlier around our predictions for the budget, and we do them every year, and then it got to the end of the speech, and I thought, no CGT, no inheritance tax, it's going to be in the small print, but none of us have yet to find any announcements on it. Patrick?
No, nothing at all. A lot of the pre-budget commentary was about, we'd gone through 2 years of coronavirus budgets and it was emergency measures and we were going to get back to normal. So we were expecting to see quite a lot of tinkering in relation to, specifically you mentioned CGT and IHT, but actually there was nothing. There's just no change at the moment. And Patrick alluded to it. Maybe we might get a bit more next March. Nothing else as well related to pensions as well. So actually it was, as much as anything for us as accountants, it seemed to be a budget of the non-event rather than what was the eventful.
Yeah, certainly, I'd agree with that. I mean, there were a couple of key changes that do impact our client base, which weren't in the budget at all, which is fairly unusual. But then if you've delivered all the bad news beforehand, you perhaps don't want to mention them and kind of slip them under the carpet a little. This economic crime anti-money laundering levy that is going to impact a huge amount of businesses that have got no idea, I suspect it's coming. When if I thought about who it applies to, it's estate agents, lawyers, accountants, anybody that has to basically deal with any money laundering obligations, and the levies aren't cheap. Hey, Tony?
No. I mean, the exemption I think applies to certain businesses below. I think it was 16 million. I think I remember. But anything above that up to 36, then it's an immediate annual charge. It's an annual charge, isn't it? Between 5 and 15,000, and that increases as the business gets bigger. So it is, yeah. That was again broadest shoulders, maybe one of those sort of type taxes, I would think.
Yeah, planning to raise 100 million a year, I think, year on year. So it's quite a good learner for him.
Yeah.
I think the other one, Patrick, was the basis period reform that's being talked about and being consulted on. We had the consultation in summer, didn't we, and then drafts in July. It seems that maybe there's been a little bit of softening of the rules there, but potentially big impacts for some of our clients.
Oh yes. Basically, it's an acceleration of tax payable. So we were very concerned as to how quickly people would have to find this extra money, accelerating payments of tax for 2 years into one, almost in the worst case scenario. And it's all about putting everyone onto the same basis period. So at 30th of April year end, may suddenly find themselves having to pay pretty much 2 years tax in 1 year to get to the prescribed new 31st of March tax year end. And I think what's been announced is a delay to that and some time to pay, but we don't know all the detail yet.
No, not yet. I think it's expected to be early in November, so a bit more then, but certainly it's going to impact a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it's early 2024. I think is when they're expecting that equalisation.
Yeah, it sounds a way off, doesn't it? But we all know time flies. Yeah, I mean, there's one announcement that I saw in there that I wasn't expecting, and I don't think anyone was predicted, was the changes to the CGT payment regime, Tony.
Yeah, in relation to residential property, currently we've got a short window at the moment for residential property where we need to pay the tax within 30 days. So that's been extended to 60 days, which is more welcome relief to a number of people. I think quite a few people have been caught out by that. But there's also technical tweaks in relation to how you pay your tax if you've got mixed property, some commercial and some residential. So again, that seems to be a welcome move. But generally, the broad direction, as Patrick's saying, is that everything's about bringing tax forward, and that was a measure introduced a couple of years ago to do exactly that on residential property sales.
Yeah, and if you can't increase tax rates because of popularity, you can at least accelerate what's already there. I think it has proven in the past a good way of raising some money.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a huge amount in terms of positive investment in the economy, and there's going to be a huge more amount of detail, I'm sure, coming out of these tax announcements over the next few weeks, which we'll obviously, as MHA, be keeping our listeners posted to. But thanks both for today. And if you want any more commentary, you can find this on the MHA website over the next few days.